So, what happens when a huge global organization, say the World Health Organization, hits a legal snag they just can't figure out on their own? Well, they go to the highest court on the entire planet. But here's the cool part. The court doesn't just hand down an answer. Nope, it basically becomes a detective.
All right, so let's get into it. Here's what we're going to cover. Think of it like a roadmap for our little procedural detective story. We're going to follow the breadcrumbs, piece by piece, to see exactly how the International Court of Justice builds a case from scratch.
Okay, so every good mystery needs a beginning, right? And this one, it doesn't start with a crime scene. It starts with a question. A really formal, official question that kicks off this massive global investigation. This is basically the moment the first clue gets dropped.
And here we go. This is it, the inciting incident. A letter lands on the desk of the International Court of Justice. It's from the big boss over at the World Health Organization. And they're not just asking for help, they're flagging this thing as urgent. And boom, just like that, the clock starts ticking and the whole investigation is officially underway.
So, what's this whole mystery about? Well, it boils down to these two questions from a WHO resolution. It's all about an agreement they have with Egypt for a regional office. Now, the court's job here, it's not to pick a side. Their mission is to be the ultimate fact finder, to uncover the one, single, definitive legal truth.
Okay, but here's something you've got to understand, and it's super important. The court isn't acting like a judge in a typical lawsuit, settling a fight between two parties. Instead, they're giving what's called an advisory opinion. Think of them as the world's most high-powered legal consultants. Their job is to guide an organization like the WHO, telling them, here's what the law says you should do.
So the question is on the table. And now the real detective work kicks in. I mean, the court can't just make a decision out of thin air, right? They need evidence, cold, hard facts. So the hunt for clues begins immediately. You can just imagine the request for documents flying out of the courthouse.
And those first few months, man, it's just a whirlwind of formal letters and memos. So in May, you have the WHO's first request. Then in June, the court casts this really wide net, inviting any and all member states to give their 2 cents. But by July, they realize, we're missing some pieces here. So they send a super detailed request back to the WHO, really starting to dig deep.
And this is where you really get a sense of how deep this investigation goes. I mean, the court asks for literally everything. We're talking verbatim records of debates, little subcommittee reports, even old agreements with other countries from way back in the day. But the big one, the clue they absolutely have to have, is something called the travail preparatoires.
Now, this is a super cool concept. Think of it as the ultimate detective tool in the world of international law. To figure out what a treaty really means today, you don't just look at the final text. No, you go back in time. You look at all the early drafts, the notes, the back-and-forth discussions from when it was being written. It's kind of like finding an author's original marked-up manuscript to understand what they truly intended with their book.
And just like in any good mystery, right when you think you have all the facts, there's a plot twist. The WHO thought they'd handed over everything, but nope, a surprising discovery was just around the corner.
Check this out. This is a letter from a senior legal officer at the WHO, and he's basically writing to the court to say, oops, my bad. It turns out a completely different agreement, this one from 1952, has just popped up. And he says, and I'm quoting here, it was entirely unknown to me. Can you believe it? A critical piece of evidence was just missing. Suddenly, the paper trail is way more complicated than anyone thought.
But, this investigation isn't just about digging through dusty old documents. Now the court opens the floor. It invites nations from all over the globe to step up and state their case, to give their own unique take on the whole situation.
And boy, do they show up. You can think of them as the witnesses in this case. By the deadline on September 1st, 8 different countries had sent in their official written statements. So all of a sudden, this isn't just a thing between the WHO and Egypt. It's blown up into a full-on global legal debate.
And what's so cool is that these submissions show you the different angles everyone is taking. For instance, the United States points to a similar case with Switzerland and says, hey, look at this precedent. Meanwhile, Iraq's statement comes in, but it's in Arabic, so the court has to stop and formally request a translation. It seems like a small detail, but it's a fascinating look at the very real practical hurdles of something like global justice.
Okay, so after months of digging up documents, dealing with surprise plot twists, and gathering statements from all around the world, the court finally has everything it needs. The case file is complete. The investigation part of this whole thing, it's done.
But you have to realize, all of that incredibly painstaking work, every single letter, every translation, every document, that was all just the setup. That was just getting the stage ready for the main event, the public hearings. And with that, a date is set. The court officially announces that the public hearings are going to start at 10 a.m. on October 21st, 1980. This is it. This is the moment when all the arguments are made out loud, in person, based on that absolute mountain of evidence they've spent the last 5 months collecting.
Which kind of makes you wonder, right? Why go through all this trouble, this massive, months-long investigation, for what's technically just an opinion? Well, because it shows us something crucial about international law. For the highest court on earth, making sure the process is fair, that it's transparent, and that it's totally thorough, that's the whole point. The detective work itself is what builds the very foundation of justice.